Welcome, everyone. We are back. Another very special guest, something close to my heart. It's the game of football, soccer, the man, the myth. It is Spencer Owen. He is the founder, CEO, leader, whatever you want to call it. He does it all. Hashtag United Spencer. Thank you for being here.
Cheers, Jeff, mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we dive in, I just got to thank our sponsor, ClubGG, where you can play poker for free and create clubs, as well as win hundreds of thousands of dollars in prizes monthly. So with that being said, I got to ask you about poker before we dive into all this stuff. That's my generic background, Patrick Leonard, how I know of you. Just tell me your poker background. Are you a professional, semi-pro? What's your poker acumen?
I'm definitely not pro or even semi-pro. I've played a fair bit, for fun. I've won a tournament or two once in my time. Again, very low-level stuff. Actually, we went to Vegas for my brother's stag do about 7 years ago, and I won a little tournament out there, which helped with the spending money. But again, it was it wasn't particularly high skill level. And then just playing a little bit online here and there. But my brother actually plays a bit more. In fact, it kind of links to YouTube, because I got good at the game FIFA on an Xbox that my brother won in a poker competition. Wow. My brother won a university poker competition when he was at uni and I was at school. And he left his Xbox that he won at home, and I started playing FIFA a bit more on that. And then I got decent, started making YouTube videos. That's the small version of the story. But yeah, it's all thanks to poker.
Very cool. Hey, that's a nice anecdote. I love that. And how did you get in touch with Patrick Leonard? What's the connection there?
Well, so Patrick is a big I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but he's a big fan of YouTube football, basically. Not just hashtag, but he's actually got like an encyclopedic knowledge of everything in the football YouTube scene. And he kind of got in touch with us and sort of let us know about that. And obviously we'd knew of Patrick from outside. We never met him before. And then we went and met him. We met him. My brother and I met him, and we just was amazed by how much he knew about hashtag, to be honest. It was like, we get these sort of super fan guys who know a lot of stuff. And I obviously know a fair bit, having been involved in it all. But Patrick was right up there with like everything he knew and every individual moment. So I was like, wow, this is really impressive. And the sort of relationship grew from there. And now to have him involved in the club is fantastic. It's helped us get to where we got to, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, he's not a human being. I'm convinced. He just how he does it, his content, his poker. He's one of the most creative, sharpest, smartest, most successful guys in poker, and he loves football. I didn't know that either. That he used to play, I think, at a pretty high level, like even in the youth system, either Man United or Arsenal or somewhere big. He was like, at a high level. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. So very cool. That's how I got familiar through Patrick and have I know he's involved with the project and into it, and I've gotten a little bit involved through him, and just very excited to pick your brain. So I don't even know where to start, because literally what you did is, I think, everyone's dream. You're basically playing Football Manager, at the highest level, starting from scratch. Anyone can buy a team if you have money. There's a price, but you actually have built from the grassroots, ground up. Could you maybe just talk me through the process of what's going on here? And obviously congrats on the promotion, which is a big deal. We'll cover that. You just won the league officially for the to move up. And unlike the NFL, NBA, Major League Soccer, there is other, like the division below, or the USL, these things, but there's not actually promotion relegation, which is amazing. I think that's like the coolest thing in sports, and we'll definitely dive into that. But just tell me, how did hashtag United start? Give me your sort of background, and then I'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, thanks, mate. So I've been making YouTube videos for a long time. I made my first video in 2007, so almost 16 years ago now. I think even before that, I was making videos on a platform that pre-YouTube, Google Video it was called back then. Oh wow! So and that wasn't even to do with football. I wanted to be a stand-up comic, so I used to do stand-up comedy when I was at university, and they were like sketches and skits and stuff like that. But after university, I needed a job. Obviously, I started working in football almost accidentally. I love football, and my background, I've been making football teams and stuff. Like I ran the university football team. I had a team before that at school that I ran, and I was the secretary of. So I was always very keen, but I never thought I'd work in football. If you'd asked me what my job would be, I would have said like a radio DJ or a stand-up comic or something. That was what I was trying to do. Right. But I ended up working for a football player called Vincent Kompany. He used to be the Man City captain. He's now the manager of Burnley, just got promoted to the Premier League. And I worked with him in a social media capacity. And whilst I was doing that, I realized I'm spending so much time around football. Why don't I just start making YouTube videos about football rather than random stuff? And that's when they started to take off. So that was around like 20 2011, 2012, when Man City first won the Premier League. And the video started to do well. And then I ended up working at a YouTube channel called Copper90, which is a big YouTube football channel. And I ended up playing a character who was like a comedy character who used to go and play. I don't know if you remember characters like Ali G, Sacha Baron Cohen, who does like, you know, Borat and all these guys. Yeah. He had like a character and he'd go and sort of wind people up. I was doing that, but through the game FIFA, which is obviously the soccer computer game. And I was pretty decent at it. And I would go and play celebrities, or I would play football players, or I'd play YouTubers. And if I won, I'd always be really obnoxious and try and be funny, and that was the character. But if I lost, I had to do stupid punishments and really crazy stuff. So it was a very popular show. And then off the back of that, my YouTube channel started to grow. And I then did something called the Wembley Cup, which was a massive sort of once a year YouTube football game of all the biggest YouTubers. It hadn't really been done before. The first one we did there is my most watched video. As you can see, it's 20 million views it got. And that was behind closed doors at Wembley Stadium, which is like, you know, for those that don't know, the home of English football, the English national team. And it got bigger and bigger. By the time we did the third Wembley Cup, we had 34,000 people in the stadium. We had people like Steven Gerrard playing, you know, we had huge legends of football play. And they were amazing, but you couldn't do them every week. They're once a year. They had massive YouTubers playing. So I was like super into it. How can I do this more often? I had a YouTube channel that was growing. So I basically started filming me and my mates play football.
Right.
And this is like, you know, I'm like a college level footballer. You know, I was never going to get paid to play football. Right? College
UK or college American? There's
like,
difference.
Well, it is different. You're right. I mean, I didn't go to college in America. I wouldn't have played D1. Let's put it that way.
Really? I think you'd be surprised. I think we always say this, but yeah, I actually did play D1 college soccer, and I would imagine that you could have been, you know, you might have been a starter at many.
Well, who knows? Maybe. I mean, there's a
different calibration. There is, but anyway, yeah. So you could play. You know how to play.
Yeah. So we played, and my brother played, who's always done this YouTube stuff with me, and his mates and my mates made a team. We called ourselves #United because, well, obviously we were being born on social media, right? And it was kind of like one of these joke sort of 5-a-side, 7-a-side names you get. It was supposed to be tongue in cheek, but also there was a sort of game plan there, because we wanted to create a proper club. We wanted to create a team out of this. We knew there was a long-term play, and we thought, you know, how can we be different? And typically in England, every football team has a, you know, a place name in there, you know, like where you're from. And it's like, well, let's just mix it up a little bit and have a name that it might even annoy some people because it's not traditional, but who cares? And so that was where we went with the name, and it all kind of snowballed to the point where after 2 years of doing that, we'd played in America, went on tour to New York and Atlanta. We played in Serbia, played in Spain, played in Ireland, played in Scotland, often in front of crowds, often against huge names, again, huge legends. And, you know, we'd gained a fan base, which at the time, you know, we had more Twitter followers than a couple Premier League teams. We had, like, you know, more YouTube subscribers and YouTube views than most Premier League teams at that point. Yeah. So we were flying, but there was no future that we could, you know, we were getting older. I was getting into my early 30s at the time. My brother's friends were all in their mid 30s, having kids. Yeah. So we couldn't do it forever. And they had this opportunity to enter what's called the non-league pyramid, which is like the lower levels of English football. Like English football is, I know you've got, excuse me, promotions and relegations all throughout Europe and stuff. I know you guys don't have it over there, but yeah. England's even stranger than like a France or a Spain or a Denmark, because we have such a deep system and there's so much money, even low down the leagues. So we actually entered in the 10th tier.
Right.
And that was in 2018.
And yeah, so I just put up on the screen. So just to give people an idea, like this would be the equivalent if there was like the NBA was the Premier League, then there'd be like G League. But even then, like the G League people have suggested that there could be a G League, like a relegation and this type of format. It's very hard to do. It just shows you how passionate and how big soccer or football is in UK, right? Because this is like the sport. There's not all these other leagues of major league big things, but so there's 10 tiers deep, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's 11 tiers really.
11, okay.
Yeah, and the top 5 are all pretty much professional. So like you have to be professional to be in the top 4 leagues. The 5th tier is essentially professional now. That's Wrexham, obviously the team that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney own, about to get promoted out of that. Most teams in tier 6 are professional, to be honest. Even some in tier 7 are professional.
Really? And what does that mean? Because I want to understand. So You just this is tier 8. You just moved in, correct? That's where you are now. This next season you'll be in 8, or you
next year we'll be in 7. We're
You'll
going up from
okay,
8
it's going
to
up.
7.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you just
So
went
this
up.
is our. We just secured our 3rd promotion in 4 years. So we started in 10, won 10, won 9, and we've won 8, and now we're looking to go into 7.
How uncanny is that? I mean, is this normal? Like, because there are teams that's like you're so strong. It's obviously you're above where that is. Like, is this has anyone ever just risen up? Like, what's the most impressive rise ever? Is this it, or is it hard to say for now?
There's been some great rises before, but from a completely scratch team, I don't think anyone's done what we've done. So the examples would be there's a team called AFC Wimbledon that were founded off the back of Wimbledon was a team that were in the Premier League and they won the FA Cup, and then they actually moved. It's a very American thing. It doesn't really happen in England. They moved to another part of the country. Okay. Pretty much the only time it's ever happened, actually. They moved to a place called Milton Keynes. They became the MK Dons. And all the local fans in Wimbledon, which is in South London, hated that. So they started their own team from scratch, and they had to start at the bottom. So, but the difference is they had all the Wimbledon fans behind them. So they had money and they had things that other teams couldn't compete. So they ended up getting, I think, as high as League One, if not the Championship. I think they're in League One now. And they did something like, I don't know what it was exactly, but it might have been something like 8 promotions in 10 years. It was something crazy. Wow. But they had they already had a sort of, they were what's known as a Phoenix club, you know, that they had something they were being created from. Likewise, FC United of Manchester were created as a reaction to people not being happy with Man United. They jumped about 4 divisions, I think. They stagnated 1 level above what we're at now, and I think they're actually at the same level as us now. So that wasn't quite as a meteoric rise. And then Salford City, you may have heard of, like the class of 92, the Man United legends like Gary Neville and David Beckham's even involved now. They bought a club that was around 7th, 8th tier, and they're now in League 2, which is the 4th tier. But they had a lot of money. Even Peter Lim, who's a billionaire that owns Valencia as well, he got involved. So the short answer is there has been rises from this level all the way into professional football before, right, but no one that I know of has done it from scratch with no major support. You know, like before Patrick and, you know, a Chelsea captain got involved a few years ago as well. He invested a little bit of money into the club. It's literally a family-made thing. Me, my brothers, my dad, and it's a completely new team. We didn't take over another team. Yeah, you know, we don't even have a ground. It's
so cool. And how did Cesar get involved? He was Chelsea's captain, and I think he either still is or he was for many years. And during this time, like how did that partnership come about?
Yeah, he's a Champions League winner with Chelsea. You know, he's a legend. So again, it was actually through the game FIFA. He is actually very big fan of FIFA. He's a fan of esports, which is like, you know, the competitive gaming stuff. And that's something that's been synonymous with hashtag as well. When we founded hashtag, we were also a FIFA esports team. We've been probably the most successful FIFA esports team over the last 6-7 years. We've had players that have won the Premier League twice now, which is the, you know, esports version of the Premier League. We've won a lot of other major events. And Cesar, I met him at a FIFA event. We got to know each other. He was very interested in the space. He was being approached as to whether to make his own team. And he sort of said to me, look, rather than make a team to compete with you guys, I'd love to get involved with you guys. And I was more than open to that. And yeah, it's been amazing. That was quite early on. He actually got involved, I think, before we even went into non-league. So back in like 2018, we formed in 2016. So he was an early adopter, if you like. And then we've had a lot of offers of investment and things from companies that have very sort of profit-based goals. Yeah. And whilst, you know, we're very successful in that regard, you know, for me, people I've wanted to get involved so far have been people that I know believe in it for the right reasons and want to create a sustainable football club and just love the idea of what we're doing rather than seeing dollar signs. Yeah. So we've brought the right people in at the right time, and they've always made us stronger.
Very, very cool. You know, the name that comes to mind, who I have a Twitch background, streamed for many years, like a lot, and Castro, right? 1021, who is, you know, I've spoken with him a few times. Nice guy, really built a brand for himself. Is this going to become more common? Is this something where he would likely partner with a team or something, or maybe he started our own brand? And also
look in his bio right now. So Castro's a good friend of mine. I actually was with him a few weeks ago. Okay. He's just got involved with a club called Dallas United. So there's a big tournament happening this summer in North Carolina that hashtag are playing in.
Oh,
And
this is
Dallas
the
United
like the
playing in.
winner. There's like a pool, right? A free roll or something. Is that the
$1 million.
one?
It's actually basically a poker tournament, is what they're doing in terms of the way it's scheduled. So TST, the soccer tournament, is what it stands for. It's the same guys that do something called TBT, which is a basketball tournament.
Okay.
Exact same premise. You buy your spot in the tournament, just like you might buy a spot in a poker table.
Right.
And the winner gets everything. There's no second place money, and that is $1 million prize point, prize pot. So there's some huge teams playing this. Clint Dempsey's got a team, obviously ex-US legend. A good friend of mine, Jimmy Conrad and DeMarcus Beasley, have put a team in there. The US women's team have got a team in there, which is fascinating. Obviously, a load of World Cup winners in there. Dallas is a newfound team. Wrexham, Dortmund, a huge German team.
Big
Wolves in the Premier League.
Wow.
So yeah, massive.
Sick. And when is it? What are the dates of that?
That is the 1st to the 4th of June in North Carolina, in Cary, North Carolina. It's going to be televised as well.
You'll go to that, right?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Right,
Hopefully Ryan and Rob will be there from Wrexham as well.
I'm gonna go. I gotta go. I heard Patrick told me about this about a year ago. That sounds pretty epic. That's it. But like, with a guy like Castro, is that something where would that be someone who would be a great partner? Or you said he's sort of partnered with this Dallas team. Is he? I mean, he's getting involved at a level like that. Or
yeah. So I've known Castro for about 6 years. Very, very good guy. You know, massive, as well as a good friend. I'm always a big supporter of what he does, because I think he's top notch and he's got a great heart as well. And I wanted to get him involved in hashtag years ago, to be honest with you. You know, we spoke about it a lot. It's very synonymous, but obviously the fact that he's over there in Texas makes it a little bit more challenging. I think now he's had this opportunity to get involved with Dallas, which is where he lives, and be a man on the ground. I think that he likes that. So I completely get it. But, you know, we might play each other in North Carolina. It could be hashtag versus Dallas. And, you know, hopefully we win on the pitch. But if we don't, I'd love for Castro's team to get it, because, yeah, he's a similar sort of background, really.
Who wins in their peak FIFA play? You or Castro then and now? Who wins?
Peak. It's hard to say, you know. Now he kills me. I don't play anymore. You know, since I had a little boy, there's just no time in the day, and I've got too many other things. So now he just absolutely kills me. He'd probably smash me. We've played a couple times. You know, there's a mode in FIFA called Ultimate Team, which is like the very popular kind of version of the game. And I think any version of Ultimate Team he probably beats me on. But back in the day, 2013, I beat the world champion.
Oh, wow.
I don't think he had that in his locker at any point in his FIFA career. So I think Prime Spencer beats Prime Castro on head-to-head mode.
You know, my favorite, I used to play 2-on-2 FIFA. To me, back like 10 years ago, was the most fun. Like to work with someone to play. Maybe in North Carolina we can get some FIFA going. I love it as well. I used to play same thing. It was my only video game I really played, but it's like, it's a very humbling experience. Just like, you know, racquetball or these things, these games, you feel good, you're beating your buddies, and you find someone you just can't win a point off of her that really can humble you. But yeah, what makes a great FIFA player? I mean, is it just like any game, the practice, the intangibles? But like, how do you think you were actually so good? Like, what other things is knowing the game? How important is that to understand football? You know,
so I've obviously been involved in esports for a long time now, and I present a lot of the major FIFA tournaments as well. So I've seen it all, and we're talking about the highest level. It's a lot like other esports. You know, the real skill set is, for FIFA, it's not so much about reflexes like some of the shooting games and stuff, because it's slightly slower, but it is concentration. Like at that level, you know, you cannot take a split-second decision, and you can't take too long on it. And that's what separates the highest guys, I think, and then staying cool under pressure. My thing was always trash talk. Like, that's essentially what I made a career out of. I would go, and I wouldn't want to play you online. I want to sit in your room, and I want to annoy the hell out of you. And I want to, you know, I can talk very happily all day while I play. With some people, they can't. They're just glued to the screen, and I'd get right in their face. So not an enjoyable person to play against. And that's why, for example, I beat the world champion, you know, and things like that. I put all the little games I can play. Ultimately, I used to do the same thing in football as well. Like, I would find ways of making myself better than my ability actually allowed me to be. So you have to look, you know, for little cheat codes, basically.
It is fascinating. It also sounds very similar to poker, live poker and online poker. I mean, you got guys the best in the world online, but you go live and you gotta put the chips in, and it does matter, right? It's not like wear glasses, and I mean, there are nuances and there is differences, right? It's probably similar, the live or in a stadium or competing in a FIFA tournament versus being at home and, you know, kicked back and just whatever. It is different. So that's
the big sort of thing that happens in FIFA is, you know, you get good and you play for years and years at home, And then once you get to a certain level, you have to start playing in events. And suddenly you're sitting on a stage and there's 1,000 people in the crowd and there's millions of whoever's watching at home.
Yeah.
And there's, it's a completely different experience to playing at home. And like, they say the same with poker. You don't have to think about bluffing or anything like that, or not bluffing, like body language and all these sorts of things when you're sitting at home with the computer screen in front of you. But as soon as you're around that table and you've got people looking at you, whether you're wearing glasses or not, it's a different level of competition. And I think some people are good at that bit, some people aren't.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's super, super interesting. I mean, I literally have 1,000 questions. I don't even know where to go. It's just so interesting to me. And you're seeing this become popular now. I know, again, from the highest level, from Serie A, top teams are, being sold, the valuations in different leagues, you see in NFL, the Washington getting sold for these valuations are pushing 6 billion. What do you think #United, what is the ceiling on it? I mean, is the goal ultimately to make the Premiership? Is this this is your passion, your main thing? Is that a realistic goal in X amount of years? Or what do you give me a 2030 goal? What's like a realistic trajectory for #? Because at some point you're not just going to coast up every division and win everything. And even this one you just did was hard, right? To go from 8 to 7, there's only one team promoted, which a lot of other leagues there's top 3. So you could argue, although next year's probably going to be, the teams will be better, the percentage chance of, do you think it's realistic next year also? Could you finish top 3? Is that like real?
There is a playoff spot as well at our level. So there's 2 teams go up, but one has to do it via a playoff. We've avoided that, obviously. Yeah, I mean, if we win tomorrow, we get 100 points, which has never been done at this level before. And the fact that we only won the league the week before the end shows you how tough it was. The second team, you can see there, AFC Sudbury, they pushed us all the way. They were on 91 points. They could finish on 94, which would also been close to a record in history. So it's a really competitive league this year. And we scored 101 goals as well, which is pretty crazy over 37 games. So funnily enough, the 2 teams that went up last year from this league, they're both in the playoffs to go up again. And they haven't changed their team massively. So and it's a big if in non-league because you don't necessarily have contracts on players or long contracts, but if we can keep the same squad together, I think it is definitely a top half team, if not a playoff team in the league above. Now, I could be wrong, of course, and things could change and you could have injuries and players leave, but our goal is to be competitive even without bringing anyone in next year. And then, we'll have to look and see if we can do some business. But in terms of the long-term 2030 goal or what have you, so it's all, for me, it's about #reaching our potential, right? And so when we joined non-league, I actually had a 5-year plan, which was to get to the league we've just got to. I wanted to do it in 5 years. Now we've done it in 4 technically, because even though it's been 5 years, 2 seasons were combined because of COVID. They didn't get finished. So we've technically done 3 promotions in 4 years. So we're ahead of schedule. And the reason that I aimed for the league we're in now is because I know the level very well. I've been brought up around this level of football. And I knew we could do it. I knew our business model allowed for it. I knew that we had enough fans in the crowd to be competitive. All these sorts of things. When you go beyond that into the National League and you're talking about staying in hotels overnight for games, or in some cases having to fly to games, maybe the costs just spiral. And you're talking about putting players on contracts. So for me, what we've done is we've done a reverse engineering of a football club. Like we've done the hardest bit, which is creating a brand that people care about all over the world. We have people that fly every week from America, from Australia, from Africa. You name it. We've had someone not only watch us from there, but actually physically fly to England to watch us. And that's hard to do. We've done the hard bit. The more kind of classic football bit we still need to do is get our own ground, which we don't have still. We still rent other people's grounds. And we need to build that local community that actually supports it on match day, that allows you to make more money. And once we start doing that, and we have started that, I mean, we got some of the biggest attendances in the league this year. We will fly, I think, because it gives us the extra revenue model. But for me, it's about us not overreaching whilst we're in the sort of business model that we currently have, being competitive at all times, making sure there's not a lot of football, as you'll know. It doesn't make money. Football teams just generally don't make money. It's an easy way to lose money. Like,
it's similar to YouTube and Twitch, right? People always would ask me, "Oh, how much money do you make on Twitch?" But it's more than that, right? You're building something. You're getting exposure. There's other ways, advertisements. There's things to make money, but the actual process, right? It is hard because it's not a money maker.
We're the exception to the rule. So we are a profitable football club, and that's because we have this crazy business model that other teams don't have, and that does get us some enemies because they're a bit jealous sometimes. We also have loads more costs, though. It's worth saying, like None of our competitors have staff. We have like more than 10 full-time staff making content, all this sort of things, that we have offices we have to rent, the things that just don't exist for other teams. So it does sort of even itself out. But can we get to the Premier League? The answer is 100% yes. And the reason the answer is yes is because of the promotion system that exists. The reason we wanted to join non-league is because of that aspirational sort of dream of being able to go up the leagues. And you've got things like the FA Cup as well, which allow us, we could play Man United next year if we go far enough in the FA Cup. Our women's team, who are also very good, they got to the 4th round of the FA Cup this year. They could have played anyone in the whole of England football. We could have played Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, any one of them. They entered the same level as us, but we got drawn against a team called Coventry instead. It's just the luck of the draw. So the difference is, once you start getting to the National League and beyond, it's just the price. Unfortunately, as much as it is horrible to think of, it just comes down to money. If you've got enough money, we've got everything you need to build out a club that could be Premier League quality one day. You just have to have a certain amount of money. And what's amazing about Hashtag is I've pretty much created it with a handful of people around me with no help, apart from more recently when people like Patrick have got involved. But if you want to, like, even the Salford City guys I talked about, you got 4 or 5 Man United legends who bought a football team, but really they needed Peter Lim, the billionaire, to come and get involved to get into professional League 2 football. If you're talking about getting from the National League to the Premier League, let's say something like Wrexham might be their plan, you're looking at 100 million plus minimum. Right now, we've done all right out of YouTube. We haven't made that sort of money. Yeah. So realistically, if we're ever going to get to the Prem, we need to get more people involved. We need to get more people and find a way of personally, I'd always want to be involved in the club, but equally, if there's someone else or a group of people that can come in and help us reach the potential, and I have to step aside a little bit, or I have to reimagine my role at the club, that's fine with me, as long as the club is thriving and staying true to our values, which would be a great opportunity for someone that wants to have a piece of the English football pie in a without having to take over a club with 100 years history, and having a club that can be remolded. The crazy thing about our club still, because there's a lot of rules about this in football, particularly in England, we're probably the only football team in England that can literally be molded into anything you want to be. Because if you go and buy Cardiff Football Club, you can't change that name. Like, you can't call it, Jeff FC. You can't do it. It's Cardiff. It's been called Cardiff for 100 years. People at the FA probably want us to change that name, to be honest. So they asked us to at one point. So if someone did, I'm not saying we need to or even want to, but what I'm saying is we're probably the only club in the English football system, really, that is completely open to opportunities. And could be whatever we need to be, as long as it's a good thing and we're proud of it. So, I mean, the future's bright. I've got some ideas. We're going to create a new plan this summer, obviously, with where we want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. But if we were to get another promotion or two, it gets expensive real quick.
And give me an idea of how, because it's fascinating to me as well. Like, we're talking, tier 7. You mentioned players and contracts, and you guys have a very strong team, obviously moving up. Not doing it again, but like, give me a level. I mean, Premier League, we see these contracts, top guys are making this amount of money, even guys that don't play, or, at a 15th or 10th place team, the players are making, people are making real Premier League, you're making NBA, NFL money, like big money, right? And then give me a little, give me some way that the viewers at home would be able to understand, like, what we're talking, because championship's still very high level, right? Because some of the teams, they do get promoted up and down, and it's a big deal, though. I think they say it's like the most expensive game in sports, that playoff game. Top 2 go up in this from tier 2, and then there's a 14 playoff, and then the semifinal, right? You go to the final. That game's worth like 200 million. I think that the guy at Brentford, the owner, right, as well. He did something similar where he came up, and he was a sports guy.
He's like a Moneyball guy.
Yeah. So he's done that and it's worth like a couple $100 million. If I'm not mistaken, that game or that promotion from here to here. What are some of the jumps along the way? Could you maybe explain, like, what money, sort of how big the drops are throughout this, and also what kind of contract players get here? If
you're a low-level League 2 player, you're making a living, but you're not making big money as a player, really.
You're not a school teacher as well, though.
Right? No, you're going to be full-time. Yeah. And that's kind of what we mean by pro football. So, like, all the tier 5 teams are pretty much pro as well. So most players at most tier 5 teams will be full-time professional footballers, but they won't be, driving flash cars. They don't have that sort of money. The jump up from tier 5 to tier 4 is interesting because you see, as that's where it's called EFL, which is the English Football League, and that's where the TV deals come in and things like this. So it's a bit of a, even though generally teams lose money, the jump up from tier 5 to tier 4. It's worth like an extra million a year based on the TV deal. So some teams actually can get promoted from tier 5 and have more money and in a level above, which it should work like that everywhere. But football doesn't work like that because people spend more than they get because they're so desperate to climb. So that's actually one of the only jumps in the English system where you actually are better off by going up. And that's what Wrexham are about to do for Ryan and Rob. But as you get lower, so you look at our league, right, tier 8, I mean, we're about to leave into tier 7. Players will be getting paid, but they'll be getting paid like £100 a week, maybe £200 a week. The highest paid player in the league, I think this season, if rumours are to be believed, is on about £700 a week, right? Which is a lot, and it's very unusual. But if you do the maths on that, you know, it's something like £35,000-40,000 a year. You can live off that, but it's not, you know, and it's not necessarily on a contract, so they could just get dropped any minute. There's no stability, no safety for those players. We don't pay players like that, you know. Despite our ability to, we've actually never been a highest spender in any league we've been in. I think we're probably the 4th or 5th highest this year, and we've obviously won the division, so we're doing better than we should be really financially, which is great. And that's because we don't believe in overspending. We believe in having a strong squad rather than paying silly money to players. But there's a chance there'll be 1 or 2 players in our league who won't be doing anything else but playing football, and they'll be living off it. But most of them have other jobs, and that is why I actually believe this level of football is arguably the most challenging, because you've got to think about it. Some of these guys might be not only working 9 to 5s, they might be doing physical labor jobs. Some of these guys might be on a construction site all day,
and they have kids, as well. They got to play. They got to do this. That is pretty daunting. What is your, you know, right now, if you don't like the team you have, the squad, talented, winning, best in the division. What is some of the, like, realistically, I mean, are these guys could play on tier 4, 5 teams, 3, or like, what is the actual, like, kind of, you know, gap do you think in that? And because maybe some people are just because hashtag, you said it's unique. Guys are like willing to play or play for less to be a part of this process and, you know, be involved, right? There is some calibration there. So what is it? Or could someone be on a tier 4 team starting, or 5? Or I think
what we excel at is we have players at either end of the spectrum in their career. We're a very good club for young players because we have a great platform, and we have seen players play for professional teams off the back of playing for us. They get signed. A player called Scott Pollock, for example, who won our academy series, ended up playing in League One, which is the 3rd tier for Northampton. We've got a lad right now who I think is destined for professional football. We've got another lad who left us a few months ago to go 2 tiers higher into the National League and is thriving. So we've got a lot of very good young players. And then the other end, we get players who at the end of their career who love the project. So we've got a player called Greg Halford. He played in the Premier League. He played 40 odd times in the Premier League. He spent the rest of his career in the Championship and League One. So he is, you know, tried and tested top tier footballer.
Yep.
We've got a player called Nathan Smith who won League 2, which is the 4th tier. He got man of the match at Wembley in the EFL Trophy final. You know, he used to be the fastest defender on FIFA, which is pretty cool. So we've got players that have played at the highest levels and dropping down. And we have players that could probably realistically push into the bottom areas of professional football. So like the 4th tier, like you mentioned, I think we've got a few players that are capable of it. We probably don't have a lot of players in their prime because, well, we have a few, but generally, you know, if you're in you're going to play as high as you physically can. And we've always got one of the best teams in the league. So for example, this year we've won the 8th tier, but we're not an 8th tier team. Right. Our team is definitely a 7th tier team in quality. There's definitely teams in that level that we're better than. So it's just we've been able to put together a better team than the level should have, really, because of the project. So yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing about us. We've got players that genuinely have played at the highest level. Internationals, we've got quite a few guys that have international caps. Nathan Smith played twice for Jamaica. Tom Williams, who used to play for us, played twice for Cyprus. Another guy, Simon Petty, played twice for Montserrat. So we have got international players. But again, the higher we go, the more that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It really is. It is exciting. And I mean, you must love what you do. Is there anything else you could imagine doing at this moment? Or do you see this, because with this kind of where you're at, how fast it's growing, I'm sure it's like you look around, there's infinite things to do, right? You got I think Alex, right? Who's your partner? She's been involved. You got your dad, brother, people have been working in the club and are just, it's like, you know, it's got to be so fun, right? To do this. And what would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
Well, I always say, you know, I talked about how I, you know, create football teams when I was a kid and all this sort of thing. When I was like 20, if you'd asked me what my dream job was, I genuinely didn't know at that point.
Yeah.
What I would have said to you is I'd have said, look, I don't know what I'm going to do, but if I'm good at what I do and if I make money when I'm older, I'll buy a football team. That's what I would have said to you. I would have a career like traditional, retire, buy a football team to run for fun. What I've managed to do is find a loophole where I'm running a football team in my actual career. And that's, you know, I couldn't think of something more fun to do, to be honest. You know, it's stressful. It's different. We have a different model. You know, I'm not that wealthy businessman who's retired and can just sort of throw money at the project. It has to make financial sense every year, which I wouldn't want to do it any other way. But it does sometimes mean that we're fighting against teams that are just happy to lose money, whereas we actually want to have a good business model. And yeah, you talk about like my family and stuff involved. My mum's involved as well. Both my brothers have been involved. You know, some of these, we have like club legends, even though we're a young team, we have a hall of fame. We have that our fans all vote for and stuff. And like one of my best mate, who I've been friends with since I was 7 years old, you know, he's a club legend. Now, he didn't used to get in the school football team. You know, he's an amateur footballer, but because he played in that early version of the team, and we used to have a lot of fun, score a lot of goals against, you know, not great teams. He's a club legend. He gets mentioned all the time. People know he works in a bank in England, but people know him for playing for Hashtag. And that's what I love about this club is even though we've got big aspirations and we're trying to go a little bit more elite now, we have this really crazy origin story that can't really be matched. And you add to that, you know, when COVID hit and we couldn't play for a little bit, we got productive and we merged with the women's team. We merged with the best women's team in the county, actually. We merged with a youth team. So now we have 600 players, you know, across from 5 years old all the way up to adult football, including, you know, sort of older football for walking football. We have disability football. We have Alzheimer's football.
You have like 40 teams, is that right, or more? Maybe
yeah, 45, I think, teams, 600 players, boys and girls. Our women's team are, you know, the best in the county. They are hopefully about to go up to the 3rd tier, which means it will be an unprecedented double promotion, and it will pretty much be the best season we could ever have, even in the future, because the fact that both teams have gone up, top of their league, had to win their league to go up, record points in the history of the club, most goals scored, history of the club, best win percentage, most clean sheets, everything has been beaten. And we're going to go up to 2 really good levels. Like, we have to really enjoy this moment because I don't think we'll ever have it again.
It's pretty cool. I mean, one of my it seems to be, I got to ask about the Ted Lasso effect, and I want to know what you think of the show. I'm sure you've seen every episode and love it. Is it as good as everyone loves it in America? It's like become, you know, I know they're on the cover of some FIFA stuff. They're in the game. Is Hashtag United? I want to ask you first, Ted Lasso, and also do you see Hashtag United being in a FIFA cover or in the game at some point? Is that
We've been in the game. So our kits were in the game for 4 or 5 years. And we've been in Football Manager. So we were actually sponsored by. So this is the funny thing. Imagine me as a kid. I just played FIFA, played Football Manager.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I found myself, I was in the game as a commentator. My team was in the game. My football club was in Football Manager. You could actually play with them in Football Manager. You know, my team was sponsored by our old kits. I got Football Manager on the kit. They sponsored us for 3 years. Like, it's mad. It's absolutely mad. So yes, I mean, and if we get to League 2, then we're in the game every single year because that's how the game works right now, FIFA. So it's very doable for us. It's kind of a target of ours. And then, yeah, like it sort of pinch yourself stuff. And the Ted Lasso thing, so it's not as big here. And I think part of the reason it's not as big is because I think I watched them and I like the show and I love Jason Sudeikis and all the guys. And one of my friends is actually in it, Lloyd Griffith. He plays the English journalist who's always asking questions. He was actually one of our first goalkeepers for Hashtag.
No way. Enough. He was on the team.
Yeah, he's a goalkeeper.
Wow.
He in the early days, and he's a famous comedian in England, and he's in Ted Lasso. But I think one of the big sort of selling points, if you like, of Ted Lasso in the States is how football or soccer as a catalyst for the show is quite niche because it's not something that's been done over there. Whereas here we've got so many shows about football.
Right.
And
that's what my question was kind of. It's less of a shock or less of like it's like, okay, I've seen this is our thing, so we get it.
Yeah.
And like, but it is still popular to like.
It's very popular. When I look at Ted Lasso, I have to like disable the part of my brain that's saying that's not how football works. That's not how football works. That's not how football. Because obviously it's a comedy and it's lighthearted like all these shows. So it's a lot of stuff that's just very unrealistic in it. But that's not the point. It's such a heartwarming, you know, lovely show with great characters. And yeah, I mean, it's won a lot of awards, deservedly so in America. It's not quite had the same reaction in England, but it is still very popular.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, it is fun. It just seems like soccer or football, if you will, is growing just similar to poker too. Like it's just like the live event numbers are up, online numbers are up. I think you're seeing it now on ESPN. You know, they're showing Premier League games, they're showing Serie A, you know, on Paramount. These things are like people are buying packages, people are following the tables, people have heard of teams. You mentioned Dortmund, which no one would heard of, but you got Reina playing there or Pulisic at Chelsea. Like people are sort of like alert and respecting, obviously Messi, the World Cup, these type of legend. Like a lot of stuff's happening where it's just becoming so. There's been a lot. Mbappe, right? He goes to the Barclays or the centers, and they're like celebrating. People know who soccer players are, and in America, and they're like getting it. They respect it more. You know, LeBron and Liverpool. There's like a lot more collaboration. It seems like the cool thing to do by a football team. You know, AS Roma, freaking group, who I know very well, close friends. That Orala Bulgaris bought a team in Spain. Similar thing, like the sort of like the Brentford sort of model, like Moneyball and moving up and doing so. It seems to be kind of like the cool thing to do is buy a team. And I feel like the Ted Lasso did help a little bit, or people putting some awareness
in America. Ted Lasso
yeah.
has been amazing for football, 100%. And I think that's great for us, you know, as a result, because we need soccer and football to grow everywhere. And it's only a matter of time, I'm sure, for America will, you know, win a World Cup and whatnot once they take it up as a sport. I think the other thing we're seeing as well is with more things like the concussion protocol and stuff coming out for American football, parents are more willing to let their children play soccer because it is so much safer ultimately. We've got our own problem in soccer with heading the ball, and that's also coming out the game a little bit at youth level, because there is some evidence that, you know, lots of continuous heading of the ball over a period of time can lead to significant issues in later life. So that's going to have to be addressed in football at some point. But undoubtedly, it's growing massively in the States, and it's growing across the world, which, you know, it's nothing like it. Like at the World Cup we just had, you know, I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of World Cups, and I was in Russia for 2018 World Cup for the whole month. And it's just like the one thing that soccer has over all the major American sports, and I'm wearing a Cubs, you know, baseball hoodie right now. I actually played for the Cubs in this event last year, and I got into baseball a little bit. But the one thing that soccer has over all those sports is it's just the globalness of it. And it's the fact that you can be at a World Cup and there could be someone from Africa, someone from South America, someone from multiple places in Europe, wherever. And football is just you can be in a country and just not speak the language and say Cristiano Ronaldo or pass them a football, and you've made a friend. And you just, baseball, American football, I know they're trying to grow, and that's what I was part of with baseball last year, and it's fantastic to see. But right now, there's nothing that comes close to soccer with regards to the world's game and that unifying factor. And that's why I love it.
And how, it's exactly, definitely the world sport. It's easy, something you can, you just have a ball, you can play. It's not like baseball and you need, equipment. It doesn't really make sense. You can play one-on-one, you can juggle, you can pass. There's a lot of different variations.
Well, I think that's a big part of it as well. I was actually thinking this yesterday. It's one of the sports with the least barrier to entry. You know, and you look, there's a lot of sports. I read, I was reading, listening to an Audible podcast by Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball, and he was talking about softball and his daughter's playing softball and how expensive it is actually to get on like a softball traveling team, which then leads to you getting a college scholarship. And this is the same for a lot of American sports, and even some other, worldwide sports, like things like tennis, golf. Some of them are so not only is you need a lot of equipment to play them, so it cuts out people of certain income levels, but a lot of them they have a lot of these etiquette rules that, the lower working class don't feel comfortable in. And I hate all that stuff. And football is ultimately a working class sport. That's what it's come from. That's what the majority of professional footballers, that's their background. And I think, when you've got a sport that just needs a ball and you don't even have to own one, it could be someone else's ball. That's why you see people all over the world get addicted to it and play it, because anyone can play.
Yeah, that I'm having a bit of a throwback nostalgia to those blue Predators there over that was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. When I was youth soccer growing up, that was my favorite exact one. Yeah. The blue ones. I was on a blue team. What's got some markings on there? What are these specifically? Those are pretty.
Well, they re-released these Predators, so that's why I got them. They're like newer versions of the old boot, but I've got them in hashtag colors because our kit is blue and yellow. If anyone releases a blue and yellow anything, I buy it just because it has to be done.
Those are sweet.
I've actually got some pretty cool. So up here, I've got, as I mentioned, Cesar Azpilicueta obviously is part of the club. So these are his boots from the Europa League final, and the names of his kids are engraved on either side.
Wow.
And up here, I've got, these are pretty cool. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got some hashtag United old school Copper Monday owls, but
Oh,
yellow and
wow.
blue coloring again.
I love memorabilia and stuff. Is that getting popular over there? Sports cards? Like I know there's now Holland, these the new Mbappe's. Oh,
Gold.
whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
Those are sick.
The cards, I mean, Castro, again, talk about Castro. He's well into that. He does a lot of streams where he'll open up these like packs
Breaks.
that have cost
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of pounds. That stuff's getting bigger, I think, as well. Like as a kid, we always did like sticker albums over here, you know, you buy the stickers. But yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm in a room right now that is just full of memorabilia. I've got all my shirts on the wall from games I've played in and stuff. And
you're a hoarder like me. I got like this custom chips from places I played in the world made into stuff. I love like shot glass. Yeah, I like that stuff too, man. It's all about memory dividends.
This is my England cap here, technically. So when you play for England national team, you get a cap. You get an actual cap. So they call it caps, but they give them a cap. So I've not played for England national team officially, but I played in a charity game that was a 50-year anniversary of England-Germany's World Cup final. So it had people that had England and German internationals, along with some special guests that were invited, of which I was one. And so I got given a cap. But I'm going to tell my son that I played for England for real, obviously.
Well, yeah. Of course,
so,
that counts.
And that was at West Ham Stadium as well, which is the team I support. So that's pretty special.
Yeah, that was. We were talking before we hopped on here. That's sort of, you know, like I said, I haven't had a team in a long time, but about 15, 16 years ago, that was my team that I got to know because of Iowa Akinsetti, one of my very close friends. Grew up in the West Ham system, didn't make it to the next level. He played soccer with me at South Carolina, and then he was best mates with Anton Ferdinand, and that they had a crazy run back then, right? That was like Nigel Reo-Coker, Anton. They had, you know, a bunch of big names then, and they were, you know, kind of were young, right? Like the young guys that came up, and they had a pretty good run. But yeah, and Green Street Hooligans, pretty popular movie that's West Ham United. And how accurate, how do you love that movie, like it, or is it sort of like, you know, you're kind of it's not really how it is? And it's
I feel like Americans mention Green Street a lot more than we do in England. In England, there's another film that came out before it called Football Factory, which is very similar. I think Football Factory is a bit better and a bit more gritty, but probably a bit more realistic. Whereas Green Street is a bit more, obviously got Elijah Wood in it. It's a bit more Americanized from that, showing things from his angle and stuff. But I mean, the Green Street stuff's legit. Like, you know, it doesn't happen as much anymore. We've moved stadiums now as well, and football's become a lot more gentrified. But 100%, like in the 70s and 80s, football hooliganism was no joke. And West Ham were kind of the top of that with regards to their firms, as they're called, and the stuff they got involved in. It is a kind of a rep that West Ham struggle to shake sometimes. When stuff goes down, we always seem to be involved in some capacity. So that's not my background, obviously. And it's like any team has its bad eggs and has these things that go down. But West Ham's got that history for sure.
And tell me about how common is it? You mentioned, I think it was Valencia or some other team getting involved or buying other teams. What is, like, how common is it? If you own AS Roma, can you buy a piece of hash? Like, where's the cutoff on leagues and having ownership across different countries, clubs? Like, how does that work? And who?
So the rule is that you're not allowed to have a majority interest in two clubs that can play each other. So, for example, you see things like City and the City Group. They have teams in all these different continents. They have like a team in India. They have a team in China. They have a team in Australia. They have a team in New York, obviously New York City, as well as Man City. There's no competitions where those teams can play each other, with the exception, technically, of the Club World Cup, which could happen, which they would allow. There's a few loopholes. So RB Leipzig, i.e. Red Bull Leipzig. Now, the Red Bull franchise, they've got RB Leipzig in Germany. They've got RB Salzburg in Austria. They've got New York Red Bulls, of course. Now, the reason RB Leipzig are called RB Leipzig and not Red Bull Leipzig is you're not allowed to be called Red Bull Leipzig in Germany. They don't allow brand names to be in names of clubs. So their actual name is Rasenblau Leipzig officially. But they call themselves RB because it means it's that everyone thinks it's Red Bull, and they put Red Bull on the shirt and they put Red Bull on the badge, and it is Red Bull without it being Red Bull. Mm-hmm. Now, there was an incident where both RB Leipzig and RB Salzburg were in the Champions League one year, and they got drawn in the same group. And it was this big thing like, how can this be allowed? These are obviously they're trying to avoid like racketeering, and, you know, two teams, like someone letting a lead slip so the other team qualifies or whatever.
Right.
And it was originally not allowed, and then they reversed it and allowed it because Red Bull managed to prove that the company Red Bull didn't have a controlling stake in one of the clubs, which think they do, but I don't know. Generally, that stuff's not really allowed. So yeah, if you want to have a big network of clubs, and there's a lot of them now. Brentford have got a couple of clubs they're involved in. You know, the guy who owns Nice in France is trying to buy Manchester United at the moment. You've got a multitude of these sort of network clubs happening, but generally you can't have them in the same competition. And if you're an individual, you can't own more than 10% of the same club. Not the same club. You can't own more than 10% of two teams that could play each other. But also, if you're a player, so for example, Cesar, who plays for Chelsea, we could play Chelsea in the FA Cup in a matter of months. It could happen. And if Cesar is one of our owners, so you can see where there's a bit of a predicament there. The rule on that is 10%. So he could own up to 10% of hashtag and play against hashtag. But as soon as you own 11, it's not allowed.
Interesting. And what do you mean? So just he would either have to not play in the game or not be on Chelsea or give up a percentage, or just you can't actually own technically like 10 and compete. Like you have to be retired or something.
Yeah, well, when we have to disclose our ownership and stuff, obviously, to the league. So I think when we disclosed it, if we disclosed that he owned more than 10%, and they'd looked at it, there would be a problem for the club, and there'd have to be some sort of.
Right.
I mean, it could be terrible. It might not be as simple as Cesar not being able to play. It could be like that we get a points deduction or we get a fine. So you just don't want to be going anywhere near that possibility.
Right. Makes sense. And I actually got to ask. I know we're running real low on time. I know you're on a schedule, and I appreciate the time. We could always do a part 2. You know, maybe we'll make it a podcast tradition every time you get the club gets promoted. We'll come on and do one. That would be.
We'll have to do one in a few days then, because we've got women hopefully on Sunday. But
for sure. Or we'll have some. We'll definitely be doing more, because there's a lot of excitement, a lot of questions, and really is exciting to sweat along with. What about last year's FA Cup? So it was pretty epic, right? There was like a couple wins or PKs, like crazy. Could you tell me about what the FA Cup means, how big a deal that is, and what place or what round you got to last year, and what that looks like coming up this year, and what your expectations are?
Yeah, the FA Cup's amazing. It's particularly for non-league clubs, the lower league clubs, that it's amazing because the prize money is significant. And if you can get far enough that you get on TV, it can literally pay for your whole budget that year. You know, lower levels, it really makes a difference. So our women had an unbelievable run this year. They got to the 4th round, which is a record, which is, again, they could have played any team in England, including the best teams in England. They got drawn against a slightly lower level team. And that money is significant. And women's football is getting bigger. So to give you an example, so our FA Cup run this year made us about £28,000, right? If we'd got to the exact same round last year in women's football, we'd have got £1,000. So they times it by 28. So a massive increase. But if you got to the same round in men's football, you're making about 280 grand. So there's still a massive difference. We didn't have a great FA Cup run in the men's this year. We won our first game 3-0. Then unfortunately, in the second game, we got a red card in the 4th minute, and we ended up losing 3-2 against the team in the division lower because we had 10 men for the whole game. But 2 years ago, first year we were in the FA Cup, we had an amazing run. We actually were put on BBC. And again, coming back to the name of the club, like for me, that's part of the genius of it, is if you're a team called #United and you get to an interesting round, TV channels are going to want to put you on because the name, it sparks interest, it sparks conversation. If you're just called Brentford Athletic and no one knows where that is, you're not going to have the same reputation. So that's why we got covered by the BBC, and it was massive. It was during COVID, so there was a limit on how many people could be in the ground, but we broke the record for the amount of people that watched a game at that level of the FA Cup by 10, times it by 10. Wow. So FA Cup is massive for us, and we really hope next year we have a run in it, not only because of the money it can bring in, but it's just the best way to really grow the club in a short period of time, because you can have real interest put on you. You generally, so the tier 7, what we're going up to, regularly someone from tier 7 will get to a level in the FA Cup where they play like a Premier League team or a Championship team. Last year, someone from tier 8 played Tottenham in the FA Cup. So
how did that go for that team? How big of a gap skill wise? Is that like is it like a complete beatdown, or could they actually like keep it like 3-1, 4-2, or is it like not like 8-0 kind of thing usually on that?
It was 5-0. Just checked it now. It's 5-0 that game. That was Spurs against Marine, the club were called, who ironically are one of the only other clubs in the English league system whose name isn't about a place. They're named after a hotel. So they lost 5-0, but Spurs didn't play their first team either. I mean, it's one of them. If the higher up team played their best team and they were all fully motivated, they could kill you for sure. But The reality is this game particularly was played at Marines ground. So the quality of the pitch is lower. That's a massive equalizer in what the sort of football you can play as. Because obviously these Premier League players are used to pristine pitches where every pass is perfect. And also the other thing you got to allow for is, let's say you're tier 8 playing tier 1. For the tier 1 boys, it's the least important game of their career. Because they have got so many bigger games to play that season.
Right. They don't want to get injured. They're looking at the field like, man, I don't want to, I'm not going into the tackle. Let's just, we're here. We got to get through this round, right?
Yeah, you're never going to face their 100% ability on that day. On the converse side of that, the guys from tier 8 are never going to play a bigger game. So you're getting the best version of them. 100. They'll do things in those games that you'll never see them do again for the rest of their career, because they just have this, it's the FA Cup factor. We talk about it all the time in football. So it is a massive equalizer, and you do see shocks. That's the beauty of the FA Cup. We've got a name for it now. We call it the cup set, the cup upset, or the giant killing. Like, you do see teams. I mean, like Southend, which is a town near where I grew up, they've famously beaten Man United, I think, on a couple of occasions, and that's not even the biggest shock, So that's what I love about the FA Cup. And some people argue the top tier teams don't care about it as much anymore. They don't need the money because the big money's in the Champions League and the Premier League, and they don't care about winning it as much. So the shine has come off a little bit at the top level. But for the lower level teams, the FA Cup is a lifeline. It's the most important day of the season every time you play in it. So for us, it's massive, and we hope to have a good run for both teams.
How many teams are in that? Is it all, to what tier does it go down to? So I mean, is it literally like 500 teams enter, and it takes a year, and it just kind of keeps going? What is that?
So it's staggered. So like the first round will just be teams from like the 10th and 9th tier. And then if you get through that, the 8th tier teams enter. And then if you get through that, the 7th tier. So this is how long it is, right? So the first round is called the extra preliminary round. We've played in that. Then you play, if you win that, you're in the preliminary round. If you win that, you go into the first qualifying round, second qualifying round, third qualifying round, fourth qualifying round. So 6 games you've got to win to get to the first round. And in that first round is where the professional teams come in. So the League 2 teams don't come into the first round. Premier League teams don't come in until the third round. So if you're starting at the bottom of the pyramid, to play a Premier League team, you have to win 8 games. And you would have been the underdog in every single game. And you then have to get a good draw, because you can still get to the third round and draw a team, that's not a Premier League team. So there's good things about it, though. Like, if you're a lower league team and you draw Man United at Man United, they'll probably give you all the gate receipts. And because that money, they'll make £1 million maybe from that game in gate receipts, which won't mean much to Man United, but to the team from the 8th tier, that's paying for their club for the next 5 years. So like, I mean,
luck of the draw. And how much? So third round, how many? If you get there, how many teams are left in the third round? Is it down to like 32 or 64?
I'm not sure if it's 32. I think it's still a bit more than that. I think it might be 64, because it goes third round, fourth round, fifth round, quarterfinal, semi-final, final. So if you do the maths back on that, you can work it out. But third round's where everyone's entered in by then. No new teams come in after that.
And I know we will wrap it up, because I could keep you here forever. We'll do another one. Newcastle Independent, which is Patrick Leonard, his project. Is that very similar to #Unite? What level is that? Where are they right now? And I think they've done pretty well in general from where they've started, but I don't really, is that a different, is that in like the 10th or 9th, or where, or is that even just before that? How does that work?
I need to check, to be fair. I know they were in around the 11th tier, which is sort of doesn't really exist. It's like there's a 10th tier. Oh, there's an 11th tier. The 12th is where it's kind of like you don't get promoted from the 13th to the 12th. You have to like apply for it, and you have to be allowed in. So they're around there. They're quite a few divisions below us. There might be one higher than that now. But what I like about that project is, with one or two exceptions, a lot of these YouTube teams that exist, they're very southern in England, like there's a lot of them around London, and obviously Newcastle is such a huge footballing town and city in a part of England. The culture is so strong. Newcastle United is such a big club for that reason, and they didn't have a lot of representation. So I love that Patrick's done that, and he's making something from where he's from. And I think the project there is strong because people in Newcastle, they're just built different. Like, they love football, something else. And it's going to be really exciting to see what they do. And I think with Patrick as well, he's got so much interest in like the data side of football, and finding out how clubs in all these different countries are doing it, and finding out the best way to win games ultimately. That, however he applies that, whether it's with Newcastle, whether it's with #, whether it's in any other projects he has around Europe and stuff, he's going to be part of successful teams. I'm confident, because really is a student of the game, you know.
Yeah, good to have on your side. Not someone you want to bet against, and definitely a value
Clearly,
add in every which way. Like I said, I'm very happy he mentioned this to me. I'm happy to be involved in a small capacity and sweat along, because it is amazing to see the rise and be a part of it. And again, it just seems like such a fun project. So very, very cool. I do appreciate you coming on. I thank you for the time. Again, we'll definitely have to run it back, and hopefully I'll see you in North Carolina. If you get me a little more info on like where to stay, what city it's in, I would love to go there. It just sounds like an absolute, what's the word? Like a Disney World for this type of stuff, right? Just all types of teams and people and interest and buzz, right? It'll be a fun environment, and that is it gets crowned there. That's it. The winner, there'll be like a round and final, and the whole thing.
The Disney element is real, because someone is one team is leaving with $1 million, like whatever happens. So it's crazy, and it's the 1st of June is the group stages. They finish on the 2nd, quarterfinals, semi-finals on the 3rd, and then the final is on the 4th of June. Cary, North Carolina. Definitely get yourself down there if you can. It's going to go off because there's some just massive names involved.
Yeah, I was curious because have you ever heard of something like this? And I know in esports it's similar, right? People buy in, or there's free rolls and there's tournaments, and in poker there's different sites like Stake Kings where you can sell a piece of your action, right? Like if I play a 10K World Series main event, I can put up 5,000, crowdfund it. Is that something where the team you said buys in? Is that something? Would that be in theory possible to let the fans or people buy a part of the potential outcome? Like, is that, or would it, is there a barrier to entry? Or if you have the money, like poker, you can play, or is it like invite only and it costs this much?
This was a 32 team tournament. So there was there was definitely hundreds of teams that applied and tried to buy a spot. I know that, maybe more from TST's perspective. So they had to be selective on who got a spot. We were in as early adopters along with Clint Dempsey. But then the big teams came in. We think it's going to get bigger and bigger as well. Like we think next year, I know there's been conversations with huge teams that want to see how it goes the first year, but probably would get in on the second. So we want to put on a good show, because I think it's a really fun thing to be involved in. In terms of football, I don't really know of anything like this that's been done before. But I think it's really exciting, and I love the way different teams are coming at it. Some teams have got like charities behind them. Like, for example, the last TBT, the basketball version, was won by a team called Autism Awareness. So they were putting, a really important conversation right in front and center of what they did, and making money ultimately for autism charity. And then, you get brands that want to do it and they'll sponsor a team. You get clubs. So like Cincinnati are involved, from the MLS, load of MLS teams. I forget them all, but quite a few MLS teams have put in teams of like legends or ex-pros. One of the teams, I think it's Charlotte, who are obviously very close there in North Carolina. I know that if they win, the $1 million is going to the family of one of their players who passed away, which I think is super cool, an amazing thing to do. You've got teams like us. We're one of the only actual teams entering who actually play in the league every week. And, we'd have a lot of uses for that money. It would genuinely help our real life team, if you like. Whereas a lot of other teams have been formed to try and win the money and have it as individuals or whatever, go towards an organization. So you've got you got like your Wolves and your Dortmunds and your big teams like Wrexham that are involved. They don't really need $1 million, but they're doing it maybe more for publicity or for opportunities for their young players, because some of their academy players are going out there. So it's all very, very exciting.
So as you understand content, engagement, fan base, would that be something you would be interested in? Like so it's 200,000 to enter and hashtag is participant. Is that right?
Well, no, it's not that much to enter at all. I think the first spots were going for about 10 grand.
Oh, it's 10,000 to enter, and then, but
10,000. I think some
it's like
spots
sponsor money.
20.
There's sponsor money or money put up for the win. That's like
they'll get the money from the teams are getting money. Some of them are paying it themselves. Obviously, there's a few other costs involved, like you got to get out there, you got to have hotels and things. But and then every team is up to them how they disperse the money if they make it. If they win it, but only one team gets it. Second place gets nothing.
Let me ask you a hypothetical. In this 32 team, you mentioned some family. As well, like there's a family, hey, they get $1 million if they win, but they're in the tournament for 10 grand or whatever, and there's a prize pool, right? So they have EV 32 divided by $1 million, right? It's only one winner, 32. But it's not every team's not even chance, because there are, like you said, some big clubs, big names. It's like whatever. With that being said, would you personally representing hashtag, or do you think any of these other clubs would it be like a way to hedge and also for engagement? What if you let #United fans buy a piece of the tournament? Like say, hey, you can buy, it's $1 million to first. There's 32 teams. You can buy $5 for so it's sort of like gambling, but they're buying. I mean, it's a crapshoot, but they're buying a piece of equity in the million. You think because now you could actually even limit it just to not, there's like you could say, hey, like we're gonna let you buy up to £5 and it's $1 million to first. We're gonna sell 30 grand of tickets or 50 grand, right? So now you have up to like 1,000 people can buy £5 worth of your share, which is only what, like, is that something that would make sense for engagement? Does that interest you? Do you think it makes maybe some other clubs would want to do that? Is that legal? I would think why wouldn't it be? It's a tournament prize pool that you're selling an equity share stake on. Like if it was a reputable site, like I said, Stake Kings or something like that, would that make sense? Because now you might have 1,000 people that have £5 invested in the result. Similar to Twitch, when people buy poker action, if you're in the 10K GG Super Millions and you're a viewer at home on Twitch watching and you have $4 of the tournament, the guy's all in ace, king to queens, and you're like sweating the result. You know what I mean? Like you're a part of it. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
I think it's a cool idea. I think for us, it depends on your situation as a club. Like if you've got a team that you think has a chance, or you can put together a team that has a chance, but you're struggling to put together the entry fee money, then it's the perfect way to do it, right? Especially if you've got a fan base that are keen on following you. For us, we had the opportunity to get involved very early doors, and it wasn't a too high a barrier to entry for us. So it didn't really make sense to go down that route, but we're really interested in crowdfunding in general. And it's something we've looked at. If we were to win the $1 million, I already can tell you what the money would be used for, and it would go towards us getting our own football ground, right? So that's something we've been looking to do for a long time, and that's something where crowdsourcing could be really useful in the future as well, like letting fans have a piece of an actual football ground, or have a piece of the club, which in turn gets the football ground.
Would you be open to that as well? Like if 1% crowdfund, is that legal though? Could you 2% put the equity, the current valuation, say it's going to this, I know like Green Bay Packers and NFL, there are sites and companies that do stuff like that where the fans do have a piece. So
Germany famously have a 51% rule, which is that fans have to own 51% of the football club. That is a rule there. England doesn't have anything like that, but we do have AFC Wimbledon, who I mentioned, who are a Phoenix club. They're a fan-owned club. You've got teams that regularly have done in non-league, at least. A team called South Shields did it. I think they put 10 or 20% of the club up to help the club kick on, and they sold those shares to the fans, and they ended up getting promotion as a result. You've actually had clubs in the past that have been 100% fan-owned, and they make all the decisions as well. So they do it by committee, which in my experience doesn't end well. They're literally letting the fans choose the team or sack the manager. That you want someone or a group of people in charge that do that, in my experience. But in terms of getting fans involved in football and letting them have a say in the big issues, I'm all for that. And it's something we're looking at for sure.
Well, we can talk about that later. It sounds like the Socios, the token. I know Alex Dreyfus was poker background, Global Poker League, and then he went into this, and it became very successful. A fan engagement token where actually people can vote on. I think, like you said, there's a certain cutoff, right? You're not voting on some things, but do you want to choose the jersey design? You want to choose a question in a press conference, like those type of things? Okay, but when you start letting them, the inmates run the asylum, it's a tricky path. But listen, like I said, man, I appreciate the time. I know you got to go. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Everyone, give him a follow. Hashtag, of course, Spencer Owen on his socials, the original content man in football, FIFA, did it all, and now he has taken #United up the ranks, women, men's, kids, other thing. 45 teams, a ton of people, ton of players, and it's very fun to sweat, man. Congrats to you, and congrats on the promotion. We'll be seeing more, speaking more. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Jeff. Thanks for the support.
Thanks, Spencer. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Another podcast, and of course, every week on the GG Super Millions, Tuesday, 2:45 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. Leave the comments below, and please give #United a follow and check it out. It's very fun rise to the top. And again, thanks, Spencer, for the time, and we'll see you guys soon.